What if the first signs of a major turning point did not arrive with noise, but with complete silence? At this very moment in Jerusalem, the ground is shifting without trembling. The sky is forming shapes that refuse to move. And these events are unfolding in the exact location described in ancient scripture thousands of years ago. The question is no longer whether something is happening. The real question is whether we are prepared to understand it. In recent observations reported by local monitoring teams and regional geological assessments, an unusual formation has appeared along the surface of the Mount of Olives. At first glance, the narrow fracture in the stone looked like ordinary erosion, something expected in a city layered with centuries of weathering, foot traffic, and environmental stress. Jerusalem is not unfamiliar with surface cracks, and most of them are quickly dismissed as part of the natural aging of infrastructure. However, this particular fracture did not behave like any typical example recorded in similar environments. Over a period of days, it continued to extend in a steady and controlled manner, not widening chaotically, not branching unpredictably, but following a consistent directional path that immediately drew attention from observers familiar with both the terrain and the region's geological patterns. What made this development significant was not its size, but its behavior. The crack expanded along a clear east to west axis, maintaining a straight trajectory that aligned with areas known to contain ancient stone structures and burial sites. In geological processes, fractures usually follow zones of weakness, such as variations in material density, underground water flow, or existing fault stress points. Yet this fracture appeared to ignore those variables entirely. It did not respond to visible environmental factors. Instead, it advanced with a precision that suggested consistency rather than randomness. Seismic monitoring systems operating across the Middle East, including those connected to the Dead Sea Transform fault system, recorded only extremely minor micro-tremors during this period. According to internationally recognized measurement standards used by the United States Geological Survey, such micro-tremors are typically too weak to produce visible deformation at the surface level. These signals are often filtered out of public reporting because they are considered background activity. In this case, however, they were the only measurable data present. There were no aftershocks, no clustering of seismic events, and no escalation in intensity. The absence of stronger activity created a contradiction that experts could not easily resolve. The surface was changing, but the underlying data did not support the kind of force required to produce that change. This contradiction has been noted in multiple analytical discussions related to seismic behavior. Under normal conditions, ground deformation is accompanied by detectable stress release, measurable displacement, or secondary fracturing. None of those indicators were present here. Engineers reviewing surface measurements and visual documentation found no evidence of structural failure. Yet they also could not categorize the movement as ordinary wear. The result is a situation that sits between explanation and uncertainty, where the data does not confirm danger, but also does not allow dismissal. At the same time, atmospheric conditions in Jerusalem began to show patterns that further complicated the picture. According to regional weather observations frequently referenced by international outlets such as Reuters and Al Jazeera in their coverage of Middle Eastern climate anomalies, sudden rainfall events have been recorded in recent years, often overwhelming local drainage systems within short time frames. However, the pattern observed during this period differed in key ways. Rainfall arrived abruptly, without the gradual buildup typically associated with regional weather systems. Water levels rose quickly in localized areas, reshaping streets and pathways before residents or authorities had time to respond. More notably, reports emerged of water displaying unusual coloration in certain runoff channels and streams. While such changes can be explained by sediment disturbance, mineral deposits, or interactions between water and exposed earth, the timing and rapid appearance of these changes did not align with standard seasonal cycles. The phenomenon appeared quickly and receded just as quietly, leaving behind minimal physical damage, but a significant level of uncertainty among those who witnessed it. Following the rainfall, atmospheric conditions shifted again. Instead of cooling, the air became dense and oppressive. Residents described a heaviness in the atmosphere that affected movement and concentration. Temperatures did not necessarily reach record highs, but the quality of the air changed in a way that intensified discomfort rather than providing relief. This effect is sometimes associated with humidity and pressure interactions. Yet the intensity and timing of this shift stood out as unusual within the local climate context. Above the city, lightning activity was observed in locations traditionally regarded as sacred. These electrical discharges occurred without the presence of a fully developed storm system, which is typically required to generate such events. Reports indicated that the lightning appeared selective rather than scattered, illuminating specific areas before disappearing without escalation. There were no resulting fires, no structural damage, and no injuries reported. From a meteorological standpoint, each of these elements can be explained individually. Sudden rainfall can occur under certain atmospheric conditions. Water discoloration can result from natural processes. Heat and pressure variations can create discomfort. Lightning can form under specific electrical imbalances in the atmosphere. However, when all of these elements occur within the same narrow time frame and geographic location, the perception of randomness begins to weaken. In most cities, such events might pass without significant attention. In Jerusalem, the context changes everything. This is a place where physical geography is deeply connected to historical and symbolic meaning. When water, heat, and sky respond together in unusual ways, the interpretation extends beyond simple observation. People do not immediately panic, but they do begin to notice patterns. The focus shifts from isolated explanations to a broader question of why these elements are aligning at the same time. This sense of alignment becomes even more pronounced when considering the visual phenomena reported in the sky. Multiple recordings captured cloud formations that appeared structured rather than dispersed. Some shapes resembled figures with wings, while others appeared upright and organized in a way that suggested movement or formation. In several instances, observers described a dominant figure emerging clearly against the surrounding cloud layers, maintaining its form long enough to be recognized before gradually fading. These descriptions were reported independently by different individuals across different angles and moments, which added to the perception that the phenomenon was not limited to a single, isolated observation. Meteorologists have suggested that rare atmospheric conditions, combined with light refraction and human pattern recognition, could produce such images. Skeptics have raised the possibility of digital manipulation or artificial intelligence altering visual data. Despite these explanations, no single theory has fully accounted for the clarity, repetition, and coordination of the reported shapes. The debate remains open, divided between natural explanation and technological skepticism, with neither side providing a definitive conclusion. As these discussions continued, attention returned to the ground beneath Jerusalem, where technology began revealing information that had previously remained hidden. Using ground-penetrating radar, a method widely documented in archaeological research by organizations such as National Geographic and Smithsonian, analysts identified a subsurface structure beneath the Mount of Olives that displayed a level of symmetry rarely found in natural formations. The chamber appeared rectangular and balanced, with proportions that suggested intentional design rather than geological coincidence. Further analysis revealed that this structure was aligned directly toward the eastern gate of Jerusalem's Old City, commonly referred to as the Golden Gate. In archaeological studies, precise alignment is often interpreted as evidence of purposeful construction. Natural cavities tend to form irregularly, shaped by environmental conditions over time. In contrast, this structure followed a clear axis, indicating that its placement may have been deliberate. Within this chamber, imaging data detected patterns consistent with what appears to be ancient Hebrew script. It is important to note that these markings have not been physically accessed, translated, or dated. They exist only as remote observations at this stage. Scholars have emphasized caution, noting that visual patterns alone are not sufficient to confirm authorship or historical context. Nevertheless, the presence of structured markings within an undocumented underground space introduces a level of complexity that cannot be easily dismissed. No excavation has been approved, and no official statements have been released confirming or denying the nature of this discovery. In a city where archaeological findings are typically documented and analyzed with transparency, this absence of clarification has contributed to increased speculation. Silence, in this context, becomes part of the phenomenon itself. As attention continued to shift between surface events and subsurface discoveries, additional reports emerged involving acoustic anomalies near ancient stone structures. Witnesses described a brief, metallic sound, similar to a trumpet, resonating from the stones without any visible source. Sensors placed in the area recorded localized vibrations within the stone material itself. But these vibrations did not propagate outward as seismic waves normally would. There was no evidence of mechanical contact, no nearby construction, and no environmental trigger that could account for the sound. Acoustic specialists have noted that stone can resonate under certain conditions, particularly when internal stress is released. However, such resonance typically requires a clear initiating force, such as sustained pressure changes or mechanical vibration. In this case, no such trigger was identified. The sound appeared suddenly, lasted briefly, and then disappeared, leaving behind data that was incomplete and difficult to interpret. Shortly after, another phenomenon drew attention within an indoor worship space. Flames were observed surrounding a cross, visible and defined, yet producing no heat, no smoke, and no physical damage to the structure or its surroundings. Thermal scans conducted after the event detected no residual heat. Air quality sensors found no particles associated with combustion. Investigations ruled out electrical faults, chemical reactions, and projection effects. The phenomenon did not behave according to known physical principles of fire, which typically involve heat transfer and material consumption. While these events unfolded, changes continued to appear at the level of the city's infrastructure. In several locations, sections of roadway began to lift upward from below. Instead of cracking or collapsing, the asphalt rose into shallow ridges, maintaining structural integrity while altering its shape. Seismic monitoring confirmed the absence of earthquakes or tremors that could explain vertical displacement. Geological agencies reported no sinkholes, and municipal records showed no underground construction activity. Engineers analyzing the deformation noted that typical causes of ground movement, such as soil erosion, water pressure, or thermal expansion, usually produce irregular patterns and structural damage. In this case, the movement followed defined lines, suggesting a consistent force applied from beneath the surface. The ground did not fail. It adjusted. As these physical changes continued, developments in religious activity added another layer to the overall situation. Efforts to restore ancient practices, including the re-establishment of the Sanhedrin and the reconstruction of temple instruments, have been documented in various reports over recent years. These efforts have progressed steadily, involving planning, training, and preparation carried out by multiple groups. The identification of elements such as the red heifer, which holds significance in ritual purification traditions, has also been reported in religious and cultural discussions. What makes these developments notable is not their existence, but their timing. They are occurring during the same period as the physical anomalies described above. There is no evidence to suggest a direct causal relationship between these activities and the environmental changes. However, their overlap contributes to a broader sense that multiple systems are moving simultaneously. At this point, the situation in Jerusalem presents a series of observations that resist simple categorization. Each phenomenon can be examined independently and approached through scientific frameworks. Yet when viewed together, they form a pattern that challenges the assumption of randomness. The ground is shifting without tremors. The atmosphere is changing without clear meteorological triggers. Structures beneath the surface are being revealed without excavation. Visual formations in the sky appear organized rather than dispersed. Acoustic and thermal anomalies occur without identifiable sources. Human activity rooted in ancient tradition is advancing alongside these developments. None of these elements, on their own, confirm a specific conclusion. Together, they create a convergence that raises a question more complex than any single explanation can address. So the question remains, are these events simply a collection of unrelated occurrences happening at the same time in one of the most historically significant locations on Earth? Or are they signals of a larger process unfolding in a way that is quiet, precise, and not yet fully understood? And if this is not coincidence, then what exactly are we witnessing right now? As observers continued to examine the physical patterns forming across Jerusalem, a separate line of interpretation began to emerge, not from geology or atmospheric science, but from textual comparison. Some individuals, including scholars familiar with biblical literature, noted that the directional movement of the fracture on the Mount of Olives bears a visual similarity to a passage found in the book of Zechariah 14:4. That passage describes a future moment in which the Mount of Olives is affected along an east to west axis. The comparison is based specifically on orientation and structure, not on outcome or scale. Those making this connection have consistently clarified that they are not claiming the fulfillment of prophecy. Instead, they are identifying a resemblance between a present observation and an ancient description, treating it as a point of reference rather than a conclusion. This distinction is critical because it separates interpretation from assertion. In responsible analysis, especially when dealing with texts that carry historical and religious weight, the presence of similarity does not establish causation or confirmation. The observers who have raised this comparison emphasize that the current phenomenon does not match the full scope or context described in the biblical passage. There is no evidence of a complete division of the mountain, no large-scale displacement, and no accompanying events that would align with a literal reading of the text. What exists is a directional alignment that mirrors a detail within the passage, and that alignment alone has been enough to prompt discussion. Beyond this specific reference, a broader concept within biblical literature has also been brought into consideration. Across multiple texts, there is a recurring theme that significant moments do not always arrive with immediate visibility or dramatic disruption. Instead, they develop through a process of alignment, where separate elements begin to move in coordination without direct connection. This concept is not presented as a predictive formula, but as an observational pattern within the narrative structure of Scripture. Events that appear unrelated at first gradually reveal a form of coherence as they progress, not through intensity, but through consistency. This idea has influenced how some observers are interpreting the current situation. The focus has shifted away from searching for a single defining event and toward recognizing the accumulation of smaller changes. Each individual phenomenon, whether geological, atmospheric, or visual, remains within the range of possible explanation when considered alone. However, When these phenomena occur within the same time frame and location, and when they exhibit characteristics that do not fully conform to standard models, they begin to form a pattern that invites closer examination. The key point is not that any one event confirms a specific interpretation, but that the collective presence of multiple events reduces the likelihood of pure coincidence. A similar approach has been applied to the visual formations reported in the sky. As previously documented, various recordings have captured cloud structures that appear organized, sometimes resembling figures with defined shapes. In response to these observations, some viewers have drawn comparisons to imagery found in the Book of Revelation, 19:14, which describes a structured movement of a heavenly army. The comparison is based on visual elements such as order, repetition, and the presence of a central figure. Once again, those making this connection have avoided definitive claims. They are not stating that the imagery represents an actual manifestation of the described event. Instead, they are acknowledging that the visual characteristics observed in the sky resemble elements found in the text. It is important to understand that symbolic interpretation operates differently from empirical analysis. In scientific contexts, conclusions are drawn from measurable data and reproducible results. In symbolic contexts, meaning is derived from patterns, parallels, and associations. These two approaches do not function in opposition, but they do follow different standards of validation. The individuals referencing biblical passages in relation to current observations are operating within a symbolic framework. They are identifying similarities in structure and form, not attempting to replace scientific explanation with theological assertion. At the same time, there has been a consistent effort among responsible observers to avoid escalation of interpretation. No credible analysis has presented these events as definitive proof of a prophetic timeline or a predetermined outcome. The emphasis remains on observation and comparison rather than conclusion. This restraint reflects an understanding that historical texts, especially those written in symbolic language, require careful handling when applied to present-day situations. Misinterpretation or overextension can lead to conclusions that are not supported by either the text or the data. What has made this phase of interpretation particularly notable is the convergence between physical observation and symbolic reference. The geological alignment, the atmospheric patterns, and the visual formations in the sky are all being examined within their respective fields. At the same time, they are being compared to descriptions that exist within a separate body of knowledge. This does not merge the two domains into a single explanation, but it does create a layered perspective in which different types of understanding are applied simultaneously. In this context, the role of Scripture is not to provide a direct answer to what is occurring, but to offer a framework through which patterns can be recognized. The passages being referenced are not being used as predictive tools, but as points of comparison that help structure the interpretation of events. This approach maintains a boundary between observation and belief, allowing both to exist without forcing a definitive conclusion. Another factor that has contributed to the ongoing discussion is the historical significance of Jerusalem itself. This is not a location that is interpreted in isolation. It carries layers of meaning accumulated over thousands of years across multiple traditions and disciplines. Any unusual activity within this environment is more likely to be examined through multiple lenses, including scientific, historical, and symbolic perspectives. The presence of overlapping interpretations does not necessarily indicate agreement, but it does reflect the complexity of the setting. As analysis continues, the emphasis remains on clarity and restraint. The similarities between current observations and biblical descriptions are being documented, but they are not being presented as evidence of fulfillment. The concept of alignment is being discussed, but it is not being defined as proof of a specific process. The visual parallels are being acknowledged, but they are not being elevated to the level of confirmation. Each element is being treated as part of a broader conversation rather than a definitive statement. This approach allows the discussion to remain grounded while still addressing the questions that have emerged. It recognizes that the presence of pattern does not automatically imply purpose, and that resemblance does not equate to identity. At the same time, it does not ignore the fact that multiple independent observations are occurring within the same time frame and location, and that these observations share certain structural characteristics. The result is a state of ongoing evaluation. Data continues to be collected, interpretations continue to be proposed, and comparisons continue to be made. No single framework has been able to fully account for all aspects of the situation. Scientific explanations address certain elements, symbolic interpretations address others, and the interaction between these perspectives remains unresolved. In practical terms, this means that the current phase is defined not by answers, but by questions that are becoming more precise over time. Instead of asking whether a specific prophecy is being fulfilled, the discussion is focusing on why certain patterns are appearing and how they relate to both physical processes and historical descriptions. Instead of attempting to force a conclusion, observers are documenting what can be confirmed and separating it from what remains uncertain. This separation is essential for maintaining clarity. It ensures that the presence of similarity does not lead to assumption, and that the absence of explanation does not lead to speculation. By keeping observation, comparison, and interpretation distinct, the discussion is able to progress without collapsing into unsupported claim. At this stage, the connection between current events and biblical passages exists as a structured comparison rather than a definitive link. It highlights patterns without assigning final meaning. It raises questions without providing predetermined answers. It reflects an attempt to understand a set of observations that do not fully align with existing models, using every available framework while maintaining the boundaries between them. And as this process continues, the central issue remains unchanged. The question is not whether these events can be interpreted through Scripture, nor whether they can be explained through science alone. The question is how these different perspectives interact when confronted with the same set of observations, and what that interaction reveals about the nature of what is unfolding. As attention continued to move beyond surface-level phenomena and symbolic interpretation, a new layer of information began to emerge from beneath the ground itself, shifting the focus from what could be seen and felt to what had remained hidden for centuries. Modern technology, particularly the use of ground-penetrating radar, introduced a form of observation that does not rely on excavation or physical disturbance. This method, widely documented in archaeological research and frequently referenced by institutions such as National Geographic and the Smithsonian in their coverage of non-invasive exploration techniques, allows researchers to detect variations in subsurface density and structure by sending electromagnetic signals into the ground and analyzing the reflected data. In this case, the application of such technology in the area surrounding the Mount of Olives revealed a formation that immediately stood out from typical geological patterns. The data indicated the presence of a subsurface chamber with a distinctly rectangular shape and a level of symmetry that is rarely associated with natural formations. In geological contexts, underground cavities tend to form irregularly, influenced by erosion, water movement, and variations in material composition. These processes produce uneven surfaces and unpredictable shapes. However, the structure identified beneath the Mount of Olives displayed straight boundaries, balanced proportions, and a geometric consistency that suggested intentional design. This alone would be enough to attract attention, but further analysis introduced an additional layer of complexity. that significantly increased the level of interest surrounding the discovery. The orientation of the chamber was found to align precisely with a known landmark, the Eastern Gate of Jerusalem, often referred to as the Golden Gate. This alignment was not approximate or loosely correlated. It followed a direct and measurable axis, indicating that the positioning of the structure was not random. In archaeological studies, precise alignment is often interpreted as evidence of deliberate planning, particularly when it corresponds to a location of known historical or cultural importance. The Golden Gate has long held significance in multiple traditions, and any structure oriented directly toward it becomes immediately relevant within both historical and symbolic frameworks. This level of precision raises a critical question regarding the origin of the structure. If the chamber were natural, its alignment would be coincidental, and the probability of such coincidence decreases significantly as the level of precision increases. If the chamber were artificial, then its construction would imply the presence of knowledge, intent, and purpose associated with its placement. At this stage, the available data does not confirm which of these possibilities is correct. What it does confirm is that the structure exists, that it follows a defined geometry, and that it is oriented in a way that corresponds with a major architectural and symbolic feature of the city.